you. And you're right about that. There's a very great deal of photography up on the website, and you can follow along, folks, by going to artbell.com. Just find the name Roger Leir. He's our only guest listed with a human name, and click on that, and then you'll come to the material here, which we're about to talk about. So you might as well get it on the screen, along with so much else to watch up there. Now, I'm not sure where to begin. I guess I'll leave it to you. There's so much material that we have to go through, but I'm right at the first picture, 4:59 a.m., May 15th of 2009, and I guess I'm looking at something that was taken out of somebody, or what am I seeing?
Well, I believe if you're seeing a date, you're probably looking at a UFO. And that's probably part of the material from the Comburgos, Turkey UFO, which showed up 3 years in a row. I just happened to be there and looking through the camera when that was filmed. So there's a large amount of material on that UFO. Now, the camera we were using was a camera with a 300-millimeter lens and an electronic doubler. That means that you can double it to 600 millimeters. Let me explain what the situation was at the time. There were 3 conferences that went on each year. And following the conference, during the conference, let's go back, UFOs were passing over the conference center like looking at the traffic on a freeway.
Where was this?
This was in Istanbul, Turkey.
Right, okay. Just to give you some idea, Doctor, when I look at this photograph, it could either be a large object far away, or it could have been something you removed from somebody's ear. In other words, in the first 2 photographs, there's no reference for size.
Right. It was, when we get farther into it, you'll see the estimates of this was taken out over the sea. And it was from the European coast. So, the investigations that were done on the video gave us, maybe it might have been 20 miles away.
Wow.
Also, the sky was clear, but the moon was bright, and the craft was being lit by the moon. However, if you go down to the following pictures, you'll see that as we push closer and closer and closer on the craft, we can see that the front end of it is rounded.
Oh, my.
It has
Oh, my.
3 ports.
I'm looking at the video now. Oh, my.
Oh, my is right, because this has got to be, and after you've looked at the whole thing, I'm sure you're going to agree, this has got to be the finest footage that was ever taken of a UFO. Not only that, but it shows the occupants.
I think I see them. I have a question right away, if you don't mind. My God, that's incredible. I'm running the video right now. That really is incredible. What is it, Dr. Leir, that lights up the craft or puts a light on the craft? Can you tell me? It kind of comes and goes.
The craft is being lit from the outside. Now, the camera is on a tripod, but there is a slight wind blowing, and the camera is focused on the front of the craft, but the craft does move. And then you'll see that in one of the shots there, it kind of turns sideways, and although from the front of it looks like it's saucer-shaped, you'll see it's not. It's
it's a wow.
Boomerang.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It is definitely a wow. This is really good stuff. You want to click on the video, folks, and just sort of let it run in the background as we're talking. And I do think it looks like you can see 2 occupants in what would be some kind of cockpit, right?
Right. There's 3 ports that show, one in the middle and one on either end. Now, as you get farther down into the video, and you get, not the video, but when you get down into the stills, and we get to the analysis part, the analysis on this video was done by the University of Istanbul, which is a government university. and it created a stir in all the newspapers, national newspapers in Turkey, all the television stations.
I should hope to kiss a cow. I'm sitting here watching this now, as I hope a lot of the audience is, and wow. This is, and the other thing is, this is going on while you're at a UFO conference in Turkey.
That's right. This is right after the conference ended.
Goodness.
We went down the European coast to the small town called Comburgas, and we stayed up from midnight till 5 o'clock in the morning, filming out over the sea. And in one instance, this was 3 years in a row. I think it was the last year. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was the last year, 2009. Jaime Maussan and his crew were there, and they were filming it also. So there was 2 sets of original videos that were taken of this. Now, Jaime had analysis done in Mexico. Haktan Agodan, who's the head of Sirius TV and, Sirius UFO organization in Turkey, had the analysis done by the University of Istanbul, and then it went to a fellow, Mario Valdez in Chile, who used a frame splitter. Now, for those of the audience that's listening, a frame splitter splits each picture that goes by the television camera lens into 2 what we call fields. Now, the film goes by the lens at 30 frames per second. So when you split it in half, you get 60 frames per second. So he studied each individual field, and his concentration was on the occupants of the craft. And you're going to see when you click on the investigation part of this, his entire report is there, and he has made specific outlines and drawings of what these entities were doing while we were filming them.
Holy moly. This is such clear stuff. Was it just basically hovering out over the ocean in one place, or was there much movement associated with it? Because to, keep the camera on it at this distance, it must have been relatively stationary.
It was relatively stationary, but for whatever the reason, it did make slight turns to one direction and then slight turns to the other direction, because sometimes you're getting a better view of the port that's on the left side. Sometimes you're getting a better view of the port that's on the right side. And then finally it turns sideways, and you can see that it's not a disc. But, remember Bill McDonald?
Oh, sure.
Well, Bill McDonald, made a drawing of what they considered the Roswell craft to look like. And boy, if this doesn't fit that drawing,
it sure does. It's a definite boomerang shape, and it's also got significant. There's 2 different shots. One where you've got the thing strobing lights all over the place like crazy, and then many shots where it's not strobing lights like that.
Right. And, why? What are they doing? What's their intent? We've had a few people that tried to debunk it and say that, this was nothing but the reflection of lights from a fixed source on the water and stuff like that. We had one the other day that got me through the website, and he said he's a video analyst, and this has been photoshopped because you can see where the 009, when you analyze it, looks like it's below the other. Well, in the first place, I wrote him back and I said, I thank you for the time that you took for your analysis, but number 1, please give me your credentials, and number 2, please tell me where you got a copy of the original film from, because there's only 2 copies in the world. With that, I never heard from him again.
Well, I'm about 6 minutes and 40 seconds into it. This is astounding stuff, folks. Wow. What a good lens. I mean, that thing's way out there, and when you get the camera just right, you're able to get very close to it. Wow.
Yeah, now
really something.
we surveyed the whole area before we ever filmed anything. We looked for oil derricks. We looked for other platforms, light sources, ships, reflective objects, and there was nothing. I mean, there was nothing out over the water. Now, I don't know if you saw the part yet, but there was a dog standing there on the beach looking at the object, and he's just barking his barker off.
Yes, I absolutely saw it. That's just a remarkable video, and I don't know why it's the first time that I've ever seen it. Well, I was out of the country, and now I'm down to the still photographs, which, wow. These, I guess, are frame grabs. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yes, these are frame grabs.
Holy smokes. The one June 8th, 2008. Now, that's nearly a year before the other one, right?
That's correct. They were, excuse that.
Speaking of dogs.
Speaking of dogs, yeah. You talk about dogs barking on the beach. These are so smart that they, talking back to me.
So in other words, this craft had been visiting this area for quite a long time.
Well, now, I discussed this with one of our physicists, and he came up with a very interesting approach. Why did it show up just about the same time for 3 years in a row at the same time of the night?
Really?
At the same place, at the same geographical location. And he said this might be an indication of time travel. And what we're looking at might be a time loop.
Wow.
And he said,
all right, I have a question, an obvious question, I guess. If this craft had been showing up night after night after night in the same place, time loop or not, and that's something we can talk about, why wouldn't local military have sent something out to try and figure out what was violating their airspace?
In Turkey, that's kind of a strange situation because in Turkey, there's so many UFOs that unless they interfere somehow with human activity, no military force goes up, no police helicopters, no nothing. Nobody does anything. It's so common. You can read about it in the newspapers. You can hear about it on a television show. It's not that exciting. It's like you were talking about the 18-wheel rig. If it was an 18-wheel rig and it was a 1941 model, that might create some great, news. But when you're in a country where it's so open, now they have had instances. For example, in Turkey, there was 2 instances where commercial airlines became so close to circular craft, saucer-shaped craft on landing that they became dangerous, and their version of the FAA, was really worried about it. Now that did cause some military and commercial stir.
Well, you did mention Jaime Maussan, and you know what? Down in Mexico, it also got so common. In fact, they actually had a couple of, I believe, collisions between UFOs and commercial aircraft, but it got so common in Mexico that otherwise it was almost like part of daily life or something.
Oh, yes. That occurred after the eclipse. It was, like every day. And the same way in Brazil. Brazil, I've been there, at least 12 times. And it's so common in Brazil. It's the only country I know of in the world where you can pick up a tour guide and they tell you where to go see UFOs.
Do you have any thoughts, Doctor, on why these other countries are so frequently visited? We had our Phoenix Lights, but I mean, other than that, in recent years, there hasn't been much here compared to, say, Turkey or, Mexico and South America. And any thoughts on why?
Well, yeah, I do. I think that we think that we're not as visited as much as these other countries, but that's because the cloak of secrecy is so strong here
Right.
that when people talk about it, report it or whatever, it never goes anywhere. There is a blackout on this information, and this is what we were trying to do with the citizens' hearing. And it's my hope. Now, I just was served on a committee with Senator Gravel again for you had James Fox on for 710, and I was supposed to be in that film, but because of a mix-up, something happened at the last minute. I wasn't in it. But just the night before the filming, I was with Senator Gravel, and they are pushing forward. And I think this is really going to happen. We're going to get a hearing before the General Assembly of the United Nations.
Really?
I believe so. They've got he's got a very powerful group in Washington, and he's donated a corporation to the cause, which is a nonprofit 501c3, and it looks like he's got the contacts and the ability to raise the money to get this done. So it's not just him. It's Congresswoman Carolyn Kilpatrick with several of the other members of the committee that were there too, that are all for getting this done. And you should have heard the difference between their opening statements and their closing statements. I mean, they said they were open. But after 5 days of testimony from 9 to 5 every day, listening intently to what everybody had to say, they went, I'm sure 180 degrees. And they came out and said, this is not a U.S. problem. This is a situation which is worldwide. So, we're not going to get the representation from Congress, but Steve Bassett is still under the opinion that if we drive hard
plugging
enough,
away. Yeah, he's plugging away.
Chugging away, and he's fortunately been able to raise the money outside the country to do things like this. These events are tremendous, and they're tremendously expensive.
Okay, when. You know what? Let's take our break here and pick up on the other side. I want to talk a little bit about that time thing, the possibility that it was movement in time again and again and again. All right, Doctor. Okay, let's go to the phones. Evan in Washington, you're on the air with Dr. X.
Yes, Roger, Art, this is Ryan from Washington. I actually know Roger. I'm helping him. I've helped him research this case in Turkey.
Oh. Do you know who he is, Doctor?
Yes, I certainly do, and I have to thank Ryan for his kindness in putting this material together in such a way that I can have it on my computer and then use it, for example, in the fashion that I sent it to you. He organized a lot of these videos and gave me information that I didn't have.
Okay. Very good. Ryan, so is that what you're doing, organizing things for the doctor?
Well, yeah, basically everything is public information already, and it was basically broadcast all over the news in Turkey. Right. And basically all that I've done is just translated it from Turkish to English and tried to just sort of break the news in the United States, so to speak. But I wanted to ask Roger, could you go into more detail about, you were standing on the beach, and can you describe what you saw? I mean, I think it would be important for the audience to hear that you saw entities there. You saw occupants there.
Okay. Let's do that. It's one thing to see what a camera saw, and it's an entirely different thing to have actual eyes on. So, yeah, good idea.
Yeah, the first place, as Ryan mentioned, this was not right on the beach. It was kind of an elevated platform area where we could walk into like a very large patio. And there were a number of us there. I was certainly not the only one there. And as I mentioned, in 2009, there was a whole other camera crew there with Jaime Hassan and so on. But we, looked at the area. The sea was calm, and the moon was very bright. And I was saying to myself, after we surveyed the area with binoculars, looking for light contamination and seeing what the weather was like, and no clouds and so on, and the wind was very shallow breeze, not enough to cause any distortion in the camera, although, as I said, it was mounted on a tripod. And then, so to begin with, we began looking at the moon. And so we started focusing on the moon because the moon was bright. And then when we did this, maybe about 200 magnification, we saw a bright light that was just to the left and below the moon. And so the camera operator moved the lens over to focus the viewfinder on that bright light, and then we began zooming on that object, and a little bit at a time, and make sure it stayed in focus. And there it was, and so I said, look at this, and then the dog started barking, and a lot of people came over, and they were astonished at what we were seeing, and they were looking through the camera. And
all right, what about the occupants, Doctor?
We were able to get tight enough on the front of the object that we could see that there was entities in these three ports. The outside of the craft was being lit by the moon, but there was light that was coming from the interior of the craft that was lighting this area where these entities were. Now, you could see through the camera that they all didn't look like the same kind of entity. And, they were moving around and they were manipulating something. They were doing something as we were watching them.
All right, so, I'd like to add, I can see them, and anybody can see them. If you go to the video, you can make out the occupants of the craft. Now, were you able, with your eyes, to get any more detail? You said it was obvious they weren't the same kind of entities, but can you give us any more detail than that? Or is that about
with the naked eye, looking through the lens finder of the camera,
right.
Was just about what you're seeing. Now, if you go to full image analysis under show references, you're going to see analysis of the Cumbergus, Turkey UFO videos, graphic analysis, and it was done by Mario Valdez, Santiago, Chile. If you scroll down the page, you'll see the first two pictures. You'll see what we saw basically through the camera was two entities, which you couldn't see really distinctly. Now,
right.
And then you go down.
Not everybody has a computer. A lot of people listening don't have a computer. What was the basic analysis?
Basic analysis was that these were some kind of entities that were manipulating some kind of machinery in the craft. Now, there are other photographs or pictures in the analytical video where you can see, for example, the eyes. I mean, that's how clear it was through the camera. So all this here, I realize people don't, everybody doesn't have a computer. But
a lot of people are on the road right now, in trucks, whatever.
May I just interject here and say
Go ahead, Brian.
It might be disturbing to some people who are not used to seeing this type of thing, and people should know that it might be shocking to some people. But one thing to know about these videos is that they were given to the Turkey Scientific and Technology Board, which is sponsored by the government, and they tried to debunk it, and had to finally release a 2-page report that concluded that these are not balloons, they're not models, etc. And then also, I've had conversations with Bruce Maccabee, and Bruce Maccabee has said publicly that to him, this is not a hoax. So, everything is pretty much publicly available now for the public. If you want to see actual aliens, actual creatures, now we finally, after all this time, actually have credible photographs, not hoaxes like we've seen in the past. And also in Turkey, Roger, maybe you could talk about the culture in Turkey. I mean, this was all over the headline news in Turkey and all over Europe and everywhere, and we didn't hear a peep about it here in the United States. That's basically the reason why I've just tried to document it here. I just documented what is already publicly available and just translated it from Turkish to English. And I'll get off the phone and let the next caller come in. Great show, Art. I'm so glad to have you back on the air.
Do you speak Turkish?
No, but I've had to. It's been quite a pain, Art. I've had to go and use a translator, which is kind of crazy because these translators, like Google Translator, they don't translate properly.
I know.
So you have to. Yeah, I'm sure you do know because of the Philippines, but. I've tried to contact the original witnesses, and there's multiple people there that's seen this thing, but to them it's no big deal in Turkey. It's part of their culture. They call them the jinn. They have these underground bases there, and it's just fascinating. So, great show tonight. You're probably the first major show to break this news here in the United States, and it's just important that people know about it. So,
Ryan, thank you so very much, and thank you for your work. And Roger will be back in a moment. So.